Good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Morris. I'm the Director of Business Development for Gaming for GTS Distribution, and we are back with one of our board game webinars. I'm very excited today. I have a good friend and a good partner, Jamey Stegmaier from Stonemaier Games. Jamey and I met many years ago when Viticulture was starting, and I actually was a humble reviewer at the time and had a lot of good fun playing games together, and obviously have grown quite a bit since then. So we have quite a bit to talk about. Today, we're going to talk primarily around Pie in the Sky, which is the brand new expansion release there you go, to My Little Scythe. And then we are also going to talk about Tapestry, which I guess I should also start off by saying congratulations. Tapestry was the runner-up for several Game of the Year awards for Board Game Geek that was announced this morning, and sounds like Wingspan did okay from the sounds of it. So that was wonderful to see. So. Derek just sent me a first question. The page that lists upcoming webinars hasn't been updated since April. Ooh, that's kind of weird. Okay. Thank you, Derek. That is good to know. I will get that fixed today as soon as possible. It should actually be updating on a rolling basis. So if it's not, we'll get that fixed. But Derek is the guy that keeps me sane and keeps me on point for everything, James.
Okay, thanks, Derek.
Yep. With that, I will remind everybody, you're welcome to ask any kind of questions you like. As I say, everything is on the table, including the miniatures and the meeples. But feel free to open up your chat window. There is a little box that you'll see that has a drop down, and you can either select all panelists, which are myself and Jamey, or you can select all panelists and attendees, where everyone, including all the retailers, can see your question as well. So feel free to ask any kind of questions you have as you like. And with that, I will let my face that was made for radio be quiet. And Jamey, I will let you get talking about some cool new games.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And to everyone who's attending now or watching this in the future, feel free to ask any questions you want. Really, anything goes. Even if it's a sensitive topic, I'm happy to address it here or in the comments on YouTube later when Scott puts it up there. As Scott mentioned, a few of the things that I wanted to talk about today, just a little bit, but mostly I'm here for your questions. First, as you mentioned, the Pie in the Sky expansion. We announced this last month, and we're currently accepting pre-orders for it from everyone, from distributors, from retailers, and from consumers. So this is our first and only expansion to My Little Scythe, and it kind of fills out the My Little Scythe box. We designed the expansion so everything fits into the original game trays insert that we designed for My Little Scythe. And I'll show you what I mean by that in terms of the top insert. It looks like this. So we have all these different miniatures for the different factions. And we left two slots open in here. If you know the story of Scythe, you might know why we have two extra factions here. But those additional seekers are an Arctic fox, two Arctic foxes, and two owls that go in here. And previously, these miniatures were just kind of for show. Not for show exactly, but there was no asymmetry like in Scythe. But in Pie in the Sky, we added a little bit of asymmetry. We didn't want to add too much because it's still a family weight game. We wanted it to be friendly for gamers of all ages. And so we experimented with a few different types of asymmetry. And what we decided upon was that we would have an airship miniature that all players share. And they will, each player has their own little asymmetric player mat that defines what the airship does for them. So they have a little ability, and it's the type of thing where you could even completely ignore it in the game. If you're just not ready to think about the airship, if it's your first game of My Little Scythe, you can completely ignore it. But every faction has their own little tweak to what the airship does for them. And so there's this interesting interaction between players where I might tug the airship away from a part of the board where you wanted it to be, or I might end up actually pulling it towards a part of the board where you wanted it to be on my turn, and then I get to use my special ability. So I'm really excited to hear the stories of people who try these different factions or mix and match them with different configurations, different player counts. I think it adds just a lot of replayability to the core game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's one of the things that we've talked a lot about on the expansion side of things is should it be more of the same, or should it be something new and something unique, right? And for my experience, both personally and professionally, usually when it adds something new is when it really kind of takes off and kind of elevates the options for the players, especially with a game like this that I've found many times, and you've probably heard many stories about this too, but I mean, me playing My Little Scythe, I've played with both a group of adult gamers and then I've played with young kids as well. And
Yeah.
it's amazing how well it actually balances between the two, right? I mean, you can play with a child who's 8, 9, 10 years old, and they've never really done a game like that before, and they start to dig into it. And then now, obviously, with the expansion, that kind of helps them elevate their game as they're going, and growing, so to speak. But yeah, we've played, many times when we've sat down and gone, man, I wish we could play Scythe, but I don't think we have enough time. Okay, let's play My
Yeah.
Little Scythe, right? We get
Right.
through it a little faster as a game group, so it's been kind of funny. So.
Yeah, you get that side experience, but in a much more distilled form. It's easier to teach, easier to
Yeah,
play. Yeah, and I like what you said about that. We do have some like elements of more stuff in the expansion. There are a few more
sure.
tiles, there are a few more quest cards, things like that. But we wanted to add a little, a little tweak to it, a little asymmetry, add the airship, and add those new factions. And we wanted to do it at a price point that wouldn't be off-putting to really to anyone. So the
Yeah.
price for the expansion is $20.
And it's probably good to know that the size of the box is much different than the size of the base game box. The base game box is much bigger. So we've had some expansions lately that the retailers have gotten them going, oh, I expected this like giant thing. And it's like, no. It's actually like package friendly, right?
Right.
For sure.
Well, and one of the things that we were thinking about with this, and I would love some feedback, in fact, if any retailers want to chime in, is that we kind of, as I said, we designed this to fit into the original box, the original insert. And so we still put a lot of thought and effort into this box. The designer wanted it to kind of look like there was a pie in the box. That's why we have this, I don't know if you can kind of see it, but it's this reflective material for the pie part.
Yep.
But at the same time, we know that most people are probably going to throw away this box because they really don't need it afterward. And so in the future, we're trying to think about that for games where we have the ability of fitting everything into the core box. What type of packaging do retailers really want for an expansion that most people will just throw away? The box itself, not the expansion.
That's interesting.
Any thoughts about that?
That's a balance. I mean, that is, you want to be able to invest, because like doing any kind of spot varnish like that, that's always an added cost to stuff, and you want to make it look really good so that the consumer will pick it up and take it off the shelf. And once it gets in their hands, that's a huge step to actually then turning around to the cash register and paying for it and everything. But at the same time, you're right. I do know a lot of people, especially in this case where if you have designed it to fit into the base game, a lot of people will just say, well, it's cute and it's adorable and I love it, but it's going in the trash because I only have so much room on my Calic shelves, right? So that would be kind of interesting balance to kind of go back and forth on that. So there's several retailers on here. I don't know if any of them are typing or chatting or anything because it doesn't show me any of those fun things, but I do know several of the retailers on here already, and I'm sure that they may have some comments for you about what they like to see from a packaging perspective on expansions or anything like that, for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to hear their feedback. And I've seen different options from other publishers. I've seen like Bezier Games, they've packaged Castles of Mad King Ludwig expansions just with shrink wrap. I think Downforce might do that too, where they just kind of have shrink wrap around the new boards, new cards.
I've also seen some Kickstarters do that recently, where they've said, hey, if you want this, you don't have to buy the box. You could just, if you already have the base game, just buy this and we'll send you a pack of cards like wrapped up and everything. So it's interesting. There's a lot of challenges, especially now too. I mean, even before COVID-19 and all the challenges that we were facing as an industry, now, you tack onto that now the delays, and the timelines and everything from China. There's a lot more things to be, aware of and just kind of manage for when you're putting that together.
Right. It looks like Norman has a thought about it. He says it needs to sit on the shelf nicely. An expansion like this is mostly going to attract existing players. I absolutely agree. Although my hope with any expansion is that we show our support for the product for existing players, but also that it's a reason for people who haven't discovered My Little Scythe before, because we always have new gamers entering the hobby, for them to discover it, to kind of pay attention to it for the first time. I agree with you for the most part, Norman, but hopefully this does attract some new people to My Little Scythe as well.
Sure. He also added, he says he's not sure if the spot varnish is worth the cost for sure. So it's a lot easier when it's someone else's money. That's for sure.
That's true.
That's funny. Let me ask you, Jamey, I think it's interesting that when you look at the history of Scythe and the expansions that came out for Scythe, you obviously started with the additional factions, then you went with airships, and each faction had its own airship. And then you made the decision in this one to kind of switch it around to make it the single airship, and everyone has those asymmetrical boards on everything. That is all very interesting in terms of like tying the two worlds together and kind of having that symmetry in that. Can you talk a little bit about the the airship. I don't know if you can show it. I saw on one of your videos that it's not a like full like model that's together. It's actually like almost like a piece together type thing, right?
Yeah, so we really took this design constraint, this product design constraint to heart, which is that we really wanted everything to fit in the original insert.
Right.
It's a little tough to hold it. Like I showed you the top insert, the bottom insert doesn't have a lid, the board sits on top of it, so everything's going to slide if I show it to you. But we basically wanted to design the airship. Well, we had two thoughts. One was originally we thought, okay, why don't we just give each player an airship? And Hobie tried to design around that, but he found that players, it just wasn't resonating with players as much as he thought it would. And so he came up with the idea of just putting one airship in there, which worked better for the design and the playtesting. And it also happened to work better for the insert because we could find room for it. The challenge being, though, that a full airship is a little bit too wide to actually fit in the insert. So what we did is, and I think this was Hobie's idea. Hobie's the designer of My Little Scythe. It splits in two. And so if you do want to store it in the insert, as I think most people will, at the end of the game, you just split it in two, and you put each half, which are half as deep, they fit a lot better in the insert, back in the tray. And when it's together, like you can barely see the seam. I think it goes together pretty well. I think Panda did a good job with it.
I mean, you can see from there, it looks really, it looks like a solid miniature, not like a hollowed out one at all. So it's really kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah.
It's good to know, I think, also from a retailer's perspective, in case anybody like buys the expansion and comes back going, hey, my airship's broke, right? They have a little bit of information behind it, right, to know what's going on with it. So
that's a great point. Yeah, this is the intention. And we put a little note in the rule book to let people know what our intent was there.
Good. That's awesome.
Yeah. It was interesting to do this because we get so many people often ask, oh, looks like Norman has some more thoughts. So many people often ask, like whenever I announce an expansion for any game, the first question they ask is, will it fit into the original box? So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So
that's interesting.
I do listen to that. I try to, but I also think I would rather design a great expansion. I would rather have a great expansion that doesn't fit into the box instead of a mediocre expansion that does.
Sure.
So in this case, it happened all align and work out, but it's rare that we would apply that constraint so harshly as we did here.
For sure. Yeah. Norman brings up a really interesting point, and I don't think that this is an issue with My Little Scythe at all from what I've heard and what I've seen, but he did make a comment about the shrink wrap on the small expansions. And I do know when you get into ones that are really small, and we're talking like an inch or smaller, it's not so much that the wrapping on them will kind of make them teeter back and forth, but when the wrapping has that seam that's on the bottom of that, right, from the manufacturer, and then when it gets on the retail shelf, it can kind of like wiggle around and sometimes easily fall forward. I know a lot of the smaller games, Suburbia expansions come to mind, anything that's in those kind of tinier packaging. This one though, if I know it right from looking at it, this is a 9x9 box roughly. Is that right? Maybe an 8x8?
Let's see what it is exactly.
Close to that though.
In terms of inches, it's about 8 inches.
Look at this guy. He's like Tim Allen. He just pulls out the level with the That's awesome.
So 8 inches, around a little over 20 centimeters.
Yeah, so that'll do well on the shelves, which is good. So awesome. Excellent.
Although I am curious about that too, if retailers want to chime in, but right now I'm guessing many, maybe most local retailers are doing curbside pickup instead of having customers come into their stores. So if that goes on for an extended period of time, does that mean that shelf presence will mean less? Maybe a little bit. It still won't hurt anything, but will that mean less for the foreseeable future?
We are an aesthetic industry for sure.
We
like to judge a book by its cover, pardon the pun. But I do know we've been notified by literally hundreds of stores that are doing curbside pickup. And that seems to be a big thing. We've actually, for the retailers around here, they'll like this. We've actually been told by a couple of retailers some really unique and interesting solutions that they've come up with. My favorite so far is someone who went to IKEA and bought like school lockers. And they've set it up to where you order online, they give you a code, they give you a time frame, they put your stuff in a locker, and it's light enough for them to be able to bring in during the night so they can transport it inside, but still sturdy enough to protect it from the outside and everything. So that was kind of interesting. It was a pretty expensive solution from the sounds of it, but it still sounds like it's working out pretty well for them. So But
That's really clever.
we
Yeah.
have been notified by a couple of retailers that, the states that are reopening or the cities that are reopening, that they're planning for foot traffic of some type to come in, whether it's normal foot traffic, we'll have to wait to see, but
Yeah.
it's definitely changed everything in the world for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. So Norman's got some great information here. So
Yeah.
he said this pie in the sky box looks great, and I agree. It does. It looks really awesome. It says we're taking a lot of pictures of the front and back of the boxes for customers and future web stores. That's interesting to me, and here's why.
Yeah.
Honestly, for the last like 4 or 5 years, all I've heard from people is, I want the 3D box. I want the 3D box. And now I hear a lot of people going, do you have the flat front and the flat back? Like it's
Yeah.
completely flip flop. So that's kind of interesting that he pointed that out.
Yeah, I'm glad Norman said that actually, because even on our website, I think I have the front. Let me see if I have, I definitely don't have a picture of the back, and I can easily add that, but I hadn't thought of adding just a straight image of the back of the box. So I
Yeah,
will
that's a
thank you for
great
that
idea.
feedback, Norman. I'll make a note of that to do that after this live cast.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk Tapestry.
Yeah.
Because Tapestry has been one of my personal favorite games in the last 12 months that I've been playing, because it is super fun and I tend to win more often than not. So I have a good time winning those games. But this is a game that has had a really, really good run in the last year. And I just in case anyone didn't notice, I did put into the chat window the part numbers for Pie in the Sky and Tapestry. As Jamey had mentioned, Pie in the Sky is available for pre-order, so you can do that now. And then Tapestry is also available right now. We do have units of Tapestry in our Jacksonville, New York, SoCal, and Washington warehouses right now. It's limited quantities. When I say limited, that's usually under 500, but it does mean that they're available for you. So if you've got needs for it immediately, you can definitely jump into that. But this is a really unique game. I mean, there's a lot of Civilization games on the market, but both from a design perspective and from a product perspective and from a replayability perspective, there's so much to this that I'm sure a lot of people, even myself, haven't even scratched the surface of yet.
I'm glad you've enjoyed it so far. It was a lot of fun to design. I've always wanted to design a Civilization game where you aren't tied to a real world history. I think there are a lot of games that already do that really well, and so I wanted to give players the creativity to design their own civilization that hasn't existed before. And that was what I went into Tapestry with. And I also wanted it to be pretty easy to learn and get to the table. And so I went with as streamlined of an approach as possible. The rule book is only 4 pages plus a reference guide that you do need. You need the reference guide to understand all the different tracks. But a 4-page rule book, I think, is much less daunting to get through than a much longer rule book. And yeah, it's just this is one of the games, and this is a game that we are excited to expand. I know people are still exploring it for the first time, which I think is great. There's 16 different asymmetric civilizations. The way that you move up on different tracks during each game can be very different. On one game, you might be very advanced on science and not advanced at all in technology or military. Other games, you might be very advanced in military and you might hold back on exploration or science or things like that. And you can really feel the difference in how it impacts the benefits that you earn throughout the game. But it's also a game that I'm eager to expand upon, because there's plenty of room for more civilizations, for more Tapestry cards, for more tech cards. And we do have an expansion that is in the works right now and in production right now, not just in the design stage, but in production. So this is a game that I'm hoping to support for a long time. And I know the price point is high. It's a $99 MSRP game, which is a barrier to entry for a lot of people. But we're trying to keep that in mind with the expansions and have a much lower price point for the expansions to both attract, like I said to Norman a few minutes ago, to attract new people to the game, and also to support those who want to get it back to the table over and over again with more replayability. Yeah.
Even though it's a $99 SRP, there is a lot in that box. And there's a lot that you actually can't even convey very easily, I think, with the back of the box. Like, I remember when we opened the copy that I got and I pulled out the rule book, and the person I handed the rule book to went, "That may be the sexiest rule book I've ever held in my hands ever." Like, the texture, the paper quality and things like that, right? And those are things that are pretty hard to get across sometimes. Like, we've seen some publishers do like waterproof cards and things like that that are, kind of PVC type cards. And when you look at the back of a box, it just looks like cards.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like an actual, like, it doesn't really call out PVC or anything special or linen print or things like that. But the quality of the components alone are really good. But then you also have a ton of miniatures in the game that are these unique little buildings, right?
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, because this is a game that I put a lot of love into all of our games, but this one was really special to me. So I wanted everything to feel great and look great. Like, just, you mentioned the textures, all of the mats that you have in front of you have this special texture that I first saw in, what is the game? There's a game from Portal Games that has this really nice texture on it, the player mats do. And I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but it has this beautiful texture. So I asked my manufacturer if we could do that. Our rule books now have a special texture that we use. So I'm all about these textures. The game board, we have these curved edges. It doesn't really make that big of a difference, but I just wanted it to feel a little special. And then, as you said,
and at $99, that's an important part, right? I mean, if I were to stack Tapestry up to other $99 games, there's a lot higher component quality inside Tapestry. I mean, most $100 games are just kind of like, chock full of stuff, and they just, have a bunch of minis or something like that. But, they tend to be pretty standard components, right? Standard card quality, standard, cardboard and things like that. But this felt to me, when I opened it, I was like, yeah, this feels like it's worth more than what I paid for, right? Which is, that's an important thing that I think you want from a consumer standpoint, especially consumers buying from retail and, paying a, usual MSRP price for everything. So,
and that was, honestly, I love a variety of Civilization games, but I have, like, when I was researching this game, I would see other Civilization games on the shelf for $70 or $80, and I didn't necessarily feel like I was getting that $70 or $80 worth of components out of it. Maybe gameplay, but not components. And so I really wanted to give this. I wanted players to feel like they built a civilization that felt magnificent, and so that's why we ended up going with the pre-painted miniatures in the insert. There's 18 of them, and there's a bunch of smaller miniatures in the box as well. I just wanted players to feel like if we were going to do a Civ game at Stonemaier Games, we're only going to do one, and I wanted it to feel big and magnificent and special.
Yeah, there's not many companies that are known as the Civ game company, right?
Right.
They're making like 4 or 5 of them in a row. So that's awesome. That's awesome. And do you know, you said that the expansion for Tapestry is in production right now. Is that anything that we should expect before the end of the year, or is that something for next year, or what's your plans on that?
Yeah, there's some uncertainty around the next Wingspan expansion, exactly when that'll come out. But I know for sure, because this expansion is already in production, that it will be a 2020 release, probably around Essen time. Whether or not there is an Essen time.
Normal Essen time.
Normal Essen time, right?
That's funny. Yeah,
there should be an expansion around that time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I just had a question actually sent to me through Facebook Messenger, because some of the guys on here, I love you, but you just don't want to use the chat window, do you? I'm not sure why. That's okay. I try to not say who provides the questions. I'm thinking usually people will send me something like this privately or anything, but did get a question from someone asking, what are your opinions on mass, and how many of your games are in mass? So, yeah.
So as far as I know, none of our games are on the stores on the shelves of stores like Target and Walmart and Barnes and Noble. I do know we have one distributor that we sell to that is kind of our go-to distributor for those online versions of those stores. So Walmart.com, BarnesandNoble.com, oddly enough, BedBathAndBeyond.com. I don't know how Wingspan ended up there, but it ended up there through this distributor. And so they are on the online versions, but they're not on the shelves there. My opinion about it is, the main opinion I have is about Target, actually, because Target does a lot of Target exclusives. I know why they do that, but exclusive is a term that I have tried to completely remove from any association with my company. I want to include as many people as possible in all of our products. So anything we make is available to everyone. I don't want to say, okay, you can only get our product here. Or even make something on a very limited basis, like a Kickstarter exclusive. That's something that I did very early on in Stonemaier Games, and I moved completely away from that because I didn't like how it ended up feeling to people who couldn't get that special thing later. So That's the main thought I have about Target exclusives. I haven't even looked into getting our games on the shelves of Walmart
Sure.
or Barnes and Noble. It might happen someday, but I'm certainly other local game store retailers come first. And so if there's a lot of strong opinions about that, that's something that I think I would have to have some serious discussions about before considering. What
Awesome.
are your thoughts
That's
about that,
excellent.
Scott, or anyone who wants to chime in?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that there's multiple markets, right? I'm
Yeah.
a firm believer that the for general purpose, not like every single person, but for general purpose, the people that go to a friendly local game store go there for a reason, right? They either go there because they are hometown, they're local, they're supporting their community, or they know the owners, or they know the family that owns it, and they're connected. It's a place for them to go. It's a place for them to have a community. And those are things that you don't get online, right? And they're not things that you get from mass, right? I don't know anyone that says, "Hey, let's go to Target to play games," right? It just doesn't happen. And they all kind of operate very differently, right? Each market, whether you're an online retailer or a brick and mortar retailer or you're a mass retailer, you're kind of servicing a different type of customer, a different type of clientele.
Yeah.
I think definitely for your games, without a doubt, your games fit in that wheelhouse of traditional hobby,
Right.
collector slash strategist kind of person, right? There are people that dig into Scythe. I mean, I know people who Scythe has just taken over their lives, right? It's
Right.
become everything that they do all the time. And it's funny because I've seen a lot of my friends who have played Scythe over the years now introducing their kids with My Little Scythe, which is kind of cool, kind of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's very different markets. I think to your point, when it comes to our industry, the hobby game industry, the brick and mortar retailers being the backbone of that are a huge part of that. So I'm sure a lot of them are very happy to hear you say something like that, which is good. So
Cool.
Scott Pittner
Yeah.
just said, he said, very happy, not interested in exclusive only. Really depressing when someone comes in and asks me for an exclusive and I have to direct them at Target. Yes, that's a great example, right? Uh,
Yeah.
to your point, I understand fully why, a Target or a Walmart would want to do an exclusive on something like that. It gives
Sure.
them a
Sure.
unique opportunity, right? I do remember though a few years ago when the Disney Infinity was very popular, and
Yeah.
this is apropos being that it's May the 4th. The Star Wars one came out, and trying to explain to my young child why we had to go to Target to get this character and Walmart to get this character and GameStop to get this character, he was like, "Why aren't they just all at one place?" I was like,
Yeah.
it's a great question, son. It's called marketing. We'll talk about it later. Right? So it was pretty funny. But yeah, no, I think, when you look at the bulk of your games between Viticulture, Euphoria, you've got Scythe, you've got My Little Scythe now, you've got Tapestry. They're all very different experiences, to your point about not wanting to be the one company, that's known for this thing. I think at the end of the day, your brand speaks for someone who is providing professional products, not just games, something
Mhm.
that's, a level above what the average bear is, and games that can appeal to a broad array of audiences, but still provide those deep experiences, right? And that's pretty hard. I think it's pretty challenging to have a game that is approachable by multiple different people of different ages and different types and coming together to play those things, but still giving you a good experience. Usually when they're very broad, they don't usually go very deep. So
Well, yeah, we two thoughts there. One is we think a lot about accessibility in a number of ways, in terms of color blindness, in terms of getting your first game in terms of how easy a game is to not just learn, but also teach, and also how easy is it to come back to the table, to bring it back to the table after you haven't played it for a few months. I know there's some games on my shelf that I love, but I'm daunted to return to them if I don't play it like every other day or every week or so, because I'll forget all these little fiddly rules. So we try to avoid that in our games. So that players can get to the table more often. In the time before COVID-19, this was great. This is a great thing because I found that the more a game can get to the table, the more it's exposed to a variety of people, whether it's at a game night, a game store, a game convention. And so I really tried to break down any barrier that's going to prevent one of our games from getting to the table so that we can increase the chances that new people can discover it at the table.
that's
The
awesome.
other thing
That's
that we were talking about there, we can come back to that in a second, but I wanted to mention that to be, I mean, the idea of exclusivity and mass market stores, our philosophy of being inclusive and not exclusive extends both ways too. Because I have heard from some small, or not small, but any friendly local game store that they like exclusives too.
right.
But uh, we're not going to do that either. So we're going to try to be inclusive to everyone so that every gamer can buy the games and play the games in the format that they want, in the place that they want.
Good.
So if it's their local game store, that's great. But I don't think we would do anything that would be exclusive to a local game store, just as we wouldn't do anything that's exclusive to Target.
Sure.
The only small exception to that, because some people might know this about us, is that there are a few products we have that that would just be, in my opinion, too expensive to sell on a local game store shelf. The big example of this being the Scythe metal mechs. And so I didn't want to say like that. It is essentially an exclusive product. You can only get it from Stonemaier Games because it would be $100 for a set of 9 mechs, which is,
yeah, it's not something a lot of retailers are going to stock deep on, right?
Yeah, I can't justify that. And I can't justify that to a customer either. So it is available on our website to anyone who wants to buy it. And sometimes I've offered small discounts to retailers, but probably really not enough for them to make a nice margin on it. I try not to do that. That is definitely something I try not to do. But
I think the interesting thing about that is like something like those metal mechs, that's not a product that if it were stocked in a retailer store, that someone's going to pick it up and go, oh, now I need to buy Scythe, right? It's not, that's really servicing the people who are hardcore fans. People absolutely love it. Unlike people like me who just went crazy and painted their mechs like nuts. But yeah, no, I think that's something that is a good example of keeping something that's exclusive to a web store without it, impacting the retailers negatively in any way, which is good.
Yeah, the intent for that product wasn't to exclude. The intent was really to include more people by offering a more reasonable price than we could if we needed to go through distribution and retail. That is very rare. That's not the approach I like to take, but I wanted to have full transparency here as we talk about this idea of being exclusive.
I'm sure the shipping cost on those metal minis are real light and real easy too, right? Those things are great. Those things are pretty heavy. So
yeah.
I did have a question come through on Facebook again. This one's pretty easy, and I'll let you answer it if you want, or I can answer it as well. First question was, when is Wingspan being restocked? I kind of know the answer to that, but I'll let you take that one if you want to add to it.
Yeah, so there are 2 upcoming restocks. And I will let you know my estimates. With COVID, freight shipping is a little bit more uncertain than usual, but I'll let you know what I know right now. The first restock is focused on North America, and it's actually specifically focused on North American distributors that are able to make payments right now, which I know it's maybe a little bit difficult right now, but if any distributors are really behind on payments, it's not happening. GTS is definitely doing great in terms of making payments and whatnot.
We've talked with Paul about that already. Yep.
So I'm saying that because there might be a case where your distributor has told you that they will get it to you, and then they magically don't, and it's because they're really behind on their payments. And we need to pay the bills too. So, but for the most part, distributors are doing great with making payments. And we have a small North American print run coming through in about a month. It is not intentionally small. It was just what we thought we needed at the time. But the big news is that we did ask distributors a few months ago for a commitment for a much bigger print run. We basically said, we'll make anything you want. You don't have to pay us anything in advance. We will make exactly how much Wingspan you want and how much of the Wingspan European expansion you want. And so we did. We made it's a massive print run, bigger than any print run we've ever done. No money up front. We just made it so that we could get games everywhere that distributors and retailers need them. And that print run should arrive in early to mid July. I think distributors will get it kind of in early July. They probably get it to retailers in mid July. At the latest, I think late July. That one's been in the works for a few months. And I'm really hoping that one does meet demand. I know that's been a constant struggle with Wingspan. Yeah. Not intentionally at all, but it's been way more successful. And as Scott mentioned, it won a lot of awards today. So it continues to be more successful than we ever thought it would be.
And I just had that retailer follow up with a question, and I can answer this one. He said, "Did you guys order a large amount?" And I said, "Yes." So GTS did take advantage of that offer that Jamey offered all of us, and as he mentioned, we're in good standing, so all that is good. Thankfully, we have, our company did a lot during the COVID-19 beginnings, back around that second week of March, and we've done quite a good job, maintaining, operations. There's been a couple of closures in facilities from legal perspectives. executives and needing to cover things like that. But for the most part, our team did a great job of, responding to the social distancing stuff and at least being able to be, operational and have, a couple of people on the floor being able to pick and pull orders, which has been great. So we have kind of seen a nice advantage to how many different locations we have. There's a lot of distributors that may only have like 2 or 3 locations, and we have 9 in the U.S. We have one in Hawaii. I haven't been able to somehow go and inspect that one yet. They won't let me, but I will get there one day or another. But yeah, we do. Great question that came in on the Q&A, actually, not on the chat window. But Scott Pittner asked, other than Wingspan, or I guess we should say now, other than the award-winning Wingspan, what's one of your best titles to introduce to a non-traditional gamer?
Well, Scott mentioned Viticulture earlier and his early experience with Viticulture, and I lean towards that being one of the best ones to introduce to people because it does have a theme. Not everyone, but it does have a theme that I think can attract non-gamers pretty easily. The theme of running a rustic vineyard in Tuscany, I think, can appeal to a lot of people of a certain age, perhaps. It's not a game that someone who is underage in terms of drinking alcohol couldn't play. It's just a Euro game at that level. But of someone who's over 21 and maybe loves wine, that's an easy gateway into the game for them.
That's an ironic connection, actually. I won't say who, but someone at one point told me that they thought that Target's business model was to get people to come in, buy a bottle of wine, buy a game, and go home. So there are a lot of people that, are adults that enjoy wine or are wine connoisseurs and stuff like that. I actually think Viticulture is one of the easiest worker placement games to teach people, because of the way the actions are divided between the beginning of the year and the end of the year. It's not overwhelming. It's not, oh my God, I have to figure all these out. It's nope, I just have to figure out this half of the board and what I'm going to start off doing. And then you immediately, by the time winter rolls around, you see how things play out. And you're like, oh, that's how it works. I shouldn't have done that. I should have done this, right? So it's very, very easy to teach, which is cool.
I love teaching Viticulture for that exact reason. Because it's broken down by season. It's very easy to say. And it's a very rewarding game too. It's not a punishing game at all. You're always getting more stuff and better stuff. And the game is all about deciding when to use all this stuff that you're getting. You'll end up with a full hand of cards. Which ones do you play? When do you play them? That's where the complexity comes in. But the actual the rewarding element, I think, is very welcoming to people. Even in the first 10 minutes, they'll feel like, oh, I'm getting all this stuff. I didn't really do all that much, but I'm getting all this stuff.
Those are important things for retailers too, because I know a lot of times someone will come in and say, oh, I like X, right? I like whatever game, and I'm looking for something new or something different. Being able to transition people to certain things, whether it's, the wine, the worker placement, the easy to teach, any of those things, they're simple and easy selling points that, we all kind of think about at different times, but wrapping them all together in a package when that consumer comes in is important.
Right.
Awesome.
And I think in those terms as well, if one other thing, this is a little off topic, but it's also maybe a little conjoined, especially after schools can open up again, is that we found that Between Two Castles and Between Two Cities is kind of our gateway level game of this style, and Between Two Castles, they're games where you are playing competitively, but you're sharing cities or castles with the players on your left and your right. And we found that they work really well in environments where young people in particular are learning how to communicate with each other. And I think of schools for this, but it works for families too, because you have to, even though you're competing against the other players, you're actively learning during the game, how can I communicate with these two different people who have different needs? And I'm trying to manage my own thing at the same time. And we just found that it really helps with communication skills.
Yeah, those are good examples. We have a couple of retailers that we've talked to over the years that do community outreach programs with schools. Pat Fugue is probably the most well-known one. He does a lot up in Wisconsin with local schools where he'll bring games to players. And we've had a lot of conversations about how things like that can help, children just grow and start to learn and realize the social interactions, the economic interactions, without it being, hey, let's talk about social interactions and economic interactions and stuff like that, which is really kind of cool. I'm definitely a firm believer that gaming helps everybody grow at any age. Doesn't matter if you're young or if you're old. So it's really, really good. So I think from everything I can see, I have answered everything that people have shot me on Facebook. I appreciate the private questions. Thank you very much. And I think we've covered everything under the Zoom chat as well. So Jamey, I just want to say thank you. I want to take a second and remind retailers. So Stonemaier Games is actually part of our demo program as well. So if you are looking to get a demo of a base games only, not expansions, because mostly you don't need a demo for an expansion. But if you are looking to get a demo for any of the base games, you can contact your GTS sales rep. Basically, it's 25% of MSRP. You're able to purchase one per storefront per calendar year. It's a great opportunity, especially something like a Tapestry, even though that's a much larger, game from a price point. Being able to see the quality of those components and being able, even if you're just a consumer walking in and touching it for the first time, that's a huge connection point to the game, which is really, really good. So if anyone's interested in demos, just feel free to reach out to your GTS sales rep. We can get you set up. As a reminder, again, the Pie in the Sky expansion for My Little Scythe, that is available right now for pre-order. You're going to be able to get that set up. We do have Tapestry in stock in several of our warehouses. Just as a reminder on that, it's Jacksonville, New York, SoCal, and Washington have stock of that right now. And then obviously Wingspan we talked about, going to be coming back in. I've had 3 different people message me now on Facebook about that one. So it is going to be coming back in around summer time frame. And we do have a very sizable container order in with Jamey to be able to bring stuff in, which is going to be really good. Derek said, sorry if I asked, if it was already asked, Wingspan and first expansion will be available again. Yep, we're probably looking, Derek, somewhere around the summer time frame for that. So, hopefully when we're back at beaches and safe, we'll be able to be in a much more social environment for that. And then, Scott just said, mentioned in June. So excellent. So Jamey, thank you. I really appreciate your time. It's really, really good to have you here. Obviously, if anyone has any additional questions, what's the best way for people to reach out and get a hold of you, Stonemaier? Do you have like a info at or a sales at or anything like that?
Yeah, if you go to our website, Stonemaier Games, there's some contact forms on there that are easy to reach. You can also contact Jamey at Stonemaier Games or contact at Stonemaier Games. And once you put this up on YouTube, I will definitely subscribe to the comments so that I can be there to answer any questions. So if someone watching this, if you just want to post a question in the comments below, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Awesome. We appreciate that. You're definitely, I think it's an understatement at this point, but you're one of the most out there owners in terms of being part of the community and being, vocal on social media and channels and different things like that. So really do appreciate it. So
Thanks.
Retailers, thank you very much as well. Really appreciate the time. I know it's crazy, especially in these times as we're all dealing with many different challenges and many different solutions, but really do appreciate everybody taking the time to join us. Jamey, again, thanks so much. Until we see you next time, have a great week in your stores, everybody.